that I just have not seen before. And it makes perfect sense for this kind of game, because exploration and backtracking are so integral to that kind of style. Yeah. It's amazing that we haven't had it before. I was really surprised that they thought it through to implement it. So, Alex, since my internet was down and my power was very limited, I had to resort to playing some things that I normally do not play, or at least haven't picked up for a while. That too. But as far as video games go, I had a demo or two that I was able to play, and I also had an oldie but a goodie that I played, and it got me to thinking about a few mechanics that they had that I thought Metroidvanias would actually benefit from into the future if they'd used it more often, because they're not ones I see very often. So, thought I would tell you about 3 things. It gets to be a list today.
Yeah, list videos. Those are great, right?
Not for us, but let's just assume that it's still 3 things, folks. So the first one I actually wanted to talk about was from Shadow Complex, which is a ways back. I don't know if you ever played it. Probably not.
Well, I don't think I ever played it, no.
No. Well, anyway, Shadow Complex is from Chair Entertainment, and they really didn't do much else besides this one game. I think they did the Infinity Blade games for mobile. But this is really the one thing that they did, and it was actually very well received. I think they won some game awards for it, for, like, indie titles. The general idea being that it's like Metroid, but you're in this, like, hidden underground facility, and you're trying to save your girlfriend, but
as you do.
Yeah, but, like, then you get wrapped up in this whole thing where this secret cabal in this complex is trying to destroy San Francisco, I think. And you're like, well, gotta do something about that. And so the game plays out in this facility, and that's kind of the Metroidvania-style map, where that's all the interconnected regions and everything like that. There is one really interesting thing that it does that I think would be cool to see in more Metroidvanias, and that's they do this pseudo, like, forced 3D perspective, where, most times you're in this, like, 2D plane, and everything is just in that 2D plane when you have the classics. What they do in Shadow Complex is, though, enemies can actually run in from behind the scene. Elements are behind the scene, too. Like exploding barrels and stuff. And what happens, because, I mean, it's like a shooter, you have guns, is that when there are elements you can target behind the screen itself, your reticle actually will move to the back instead of around in an arc, and it will focus in on elements that are in the back of the scene so that you can fire on them. You can shoot rockets at them, you can blow them up, everything like that. If you have people that are coming down a corridor in the back, you can't go down that corridor. You're still in the 2D plane, but you can aim back there when they're there.
Interesting.
And then you can shoot at it. It's interesting. I think the reason why it's really interesting is that normally, if those elements aren't there, you still use the same control and you go in an arc around the screen. But if something's behind it, then it, like, automatically will justify so that it goes toward those elements. And the thing that's neat about that is that if you're dealing with any of those, you can still move past all of them because they're not they're not in the front yet.
Right.
So you can still strafe back and forth.
So you're still doing a side-scroller, but your gun can kind of go forward and backward between the layers. Your facility is essentially, like, has depth, even though you're in a 2D perspective. That's interesting. It's kind of weird, though, too. I kind of like the 2.5D myself, where you've got depth, but, it looks 3D, or looks kind of 3D with a little depth, but it's still kind of this side-scrolly.
I've played plenty.
But I'm not a huge fan of side scrollers.
So. Right. I've played plenty that have sort of like that pseudo backdrop, where the backdrop like moves independently of the main screen, so that like you'll be running along and it will stay on your character, but the scene behind it will sort of move at a different frame, so it feels like it's really like in a perspective. It's something I have not seen in other Metroidvanias, but it was very popular because, you know, you get to deal with big mechs in that game and helicopters and stuff like that. And one thing that they do is that there are sometimes turret sections, and when you get into the turret, you aim back and you're like in first person doing the aiming into the back. So even though it's a 2D game, it's got these 3D elements that provide depth that you normally wouldn't have into the game.
Okay.
So I think that it could be implemented better in terms of how the controls work, so that I have more, you know, agency in determining how I'm going to aim, like being able to aim back or up. But in general, that was just such an interesting thing, and this was like 2008 when it came out. This was such an interesting mechanic that typically does not get utilized in these games to try and give depth to it. The other ones I have are far more recent, though. One of them was a demo that I had played because, again, no internet. I had downloaded it because I was like, I want to play the demo of this, but I don't have internet, so I can still play it. And that is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. So I don't know if you've seen this one.
That's the new one, right?
That is the new one, yes.
I have not seen it. I have not cared. Prince of Persia is not a series I really gave much shits about since the 90s.
You didn't even play the Sands of Time in those?
I know.
Oh.
I know all about it. I've seen people talk about it. Whatever. I like time shenanigans, but again, whatever.
At some point, I gotta play those. Yeah, on stream.
I have heard that the new one is very good.
It is. Yeah, the demo at least. Yes. The thing that I liked about it, like before I talk about the mechanic itself, but the thing that I really liked about it is when you're doing the combat in this, the combat is incredibly satisfying. Like you feel like when you block, you actually like do a block. When you do a parry move in this and you like hit it right, it goes into like this whole animation where you like get up on top of the enemy and you slam down your dagger, and it like and the graphics like fade out and everything like that. They do a great job stylizing it so it feels really good in your hands when you're dodging and rolling and doing all of that. But they implement one mechanic that you're surprised they haven't done in more of these games. Because one of the primary things that happens in a Metroidvania title is you'll come across stuff that you know you need to go back to later, and you don't have the tools right now to get to it. You know that. Oh,
I think I heard about this. Can't you like set that as like a map point or whatever?
So they have this thing, it's called memory shards. And I think you have 20 of them at the start. I think you can get more. But what happens is you can essentially take a screenshot.
Right, that's what it is.
Of the room you are in, and then that screenshot on the map, when you go into the actual map itself, there's a bullet point on those rooms where you can look at your screenshot to remember where things are, so you know what you're going back to. How we never thought of that before.
I mean, we have,
I guess.
In other things, maybe not quite the same. I know that might have been Breath of the Wild.
Maybe.
It might have been one of the Pokemon games, but there was something like that where you could take a screenshot and then share it with like the community on the map.
Well, you know, the thing is that Ubisoft has had stuff in like the Assassin's Creed games, the more recent
maybe
ones,
that was it.
Where you could share screenshots because they had photo mode. Like, we've had photo modes, but the idea of having an integrated mode where you can actually access those on the points in the map where you need to go back to, that I just have not seen before. And it makes perfect sense for this kind of game, because exploration and backtracking are so integral to that kind of style. It's amazing that we haven't had it before. I was really surprised that they thought it through to implement it. I think I was so surprised because you don't expect Ubisoft to come up with something really useful in their game like that.
Yeah, usually.
Especially
I
these
do
days.
remember that, I think it was Valhalla that had that. You could take the screenshot in game,
Sure.
and share that, and people could be like, "Oh, look at this cool screenshot you took."
Oh, sure.
And that's Ubisoft, and I know that Sands of Time or Prince of Persia is also Ubisoft.
Yes, it is. It is.
Not sure which part of Ubisoft, doesn't matter, but they probably looked at that and said, "Hey, what if we make this useful?"
Right.
Which is cool. As someone who does not like to go back, for instance, the beginning of Fallout 4, when you're looting the vault and you have that cryo gun that's under a master lock, I'm like, I'm never going back to this vault to unlock this. I'm just going to hack it open, and take it, and then not use it until I feel like I've earned using it, and I never end up using it. So
the cryo gun's not actually that spectacular.
Yeah, but it's like that thing. I don't. In games like Fallout and Skyrim, it's like, I don't want to go back to this location. I'm never going to remember where the hell this is.
Right.
So it's like, either I get it now,
Yeah.
or I never get it. So I usually just take, or forget about it and never go back.
Right.
So something like this, that mechanic,
yeah, the memory
really
shards.
useful for things.
Yeah, the memory shards, when they introduced them, because I had heard something about it, and it was one of the reasons I was interested. Also, the idea of going back to that style for a Prince of Persia game after they were like 3D action games for a while. The entire time where I'm like, learn the combat moves and the fluidity of it, it's like, oh, this is really good. This is actually feeling really great. And then they introduced that, and I was like, wait, what? Really? This makes perfect sense for this kind of game, and it's so easily accessible, and you know exactly what you were doing, and you can set them down yourself. So when you're getting these new skill sets, you know exactly what you were going to do and go back to them. I think that it's a really great mechanic. I'm surprised that it has not been, something like that has not been more utilized, so that it's easy to... Yeah.
As long as they don't try to trademark it like Warner Brothers with the Nemesis system.
Oh my god.
We should be okay.
Memory shard TM. That's going to be great. But anyway, yeah, Ubisoft don't do
I think that would...
But
yeah, I think that'd be great with some open world RPG type games too.
It would be great for that.
Follow Skyrim type thing. Where if there's loot in a chest somewhere or something that you want to go back to or find, you can just set down that and be like, alright, well... I made a note on my map that this is what this place is. I think Project Zomboid actually does have a decent system with that. Not pictures on a map. I don't know if you've played Project Zomboid.
No, I have not, but...
Pretty in-depth, pretty good. Crave and I have been playing quite a bit of it over a little while. It's a zombie survival game, right? But the thing is, the map you have... it's got fog of war, so as you explore it, you can open up and see more of it. But you can make marks on it. You can put different, stamp icons on it for like, oh, there's food here, or there's weapons here, or something like that.
Sure.
But you can also make notes on the map.
Oh, nice.
And you can do them in different colors, but you require having a pen or pencil in your inventory. And if you want to erase a mark on the map, you have to have an eraser in your inventory.
Oh. Okay.
So it's really, I'm like, that is a nice touch, because if you do not have a pen or a pencil, you cannot mark the map.
Yeah.
So it makes it so that carrying around a pen or pencil when you're exploring they don't take up a lot of space or weight, but it's kind of a necessary thing to have, just so you can mark the map if you find a location you want to go back to.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if you were like playing a Fallout, right? And you said, okay, here's the chest I need to go back to, and you could like hit a button, and not only would you have like a screenshot saved or something in your inventory, but it would show up as a ping on the map itself. So that you'd be going, oh yeah, a colored ping, that's the thing, and I could, immediately, like, hover over it, and I'd see the screen. That would be incredibly useful.
To one-up this idea, though, for a game like Fallout, being able to do that would be fine, but I think it would be even better if you could do that in a game like Fallout and have it set it as a waypoint.
Oh, yeah.
That way it's like,
custom
okay,
waypoints.
This is... Yep. That way you go, oh, this is in this building somewhere. It's in Corvega. Where the fucking Corvega is it?
Yes. Exactly.
So you have the custom ping, essentially, where it is, but it also will, like, actually direct you to it as if it were, like, a quest objective.
Yeah.
So that you can go, alright, I don't remember exactly how to get there, but that would show you the path to get there. Which, if you've already traveled it, should be fine.
Why would you not be able to path it? Yeah, there's a surprising lack of, like, actual pathing for some of these games, especially when they make it more difficult to traverse areas where it's, you know, not like I can go in a straight line as the crow flies.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, I just thought that for, like, Lost Crown, that makes perfect sense, because Metroidvanias are so built on backtracking to new areas that you couldn't previously access that it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Then there's then the other one that I wanted to talk about, I guess it has been in some, but I just think it's a really interesting mechanic. And that's the idea of, like, morphing into your enemies. And this was one I found in a demo that I played very recently called Biomorph, which is a game that just came
I have heard of this one.
Yeah. Nevergrave did something similar to this as well, which is a demo that I talked about earlier from Pocket Pair. But the thing that happens in Biomorph that's really interesting is that you have a series of enemies that are, like, bigger enemies in the game. These bigger enemies are in certain areas and have certain skills all their own, and if you defeat them, you can actually morph into those enemies in that area. And so it allows you to get through blocks, to go over, like, spiky terrain, to flip switches that are far away. You get all of these different skills based on what those enemies did as a way of solving puzzles. But the other thing that's really neat about it is that if you have transformed enough of these over the map, you then gain the ability to do it basically at will wherever you want. You, like, learn the skill so that technically, if I've gotten the little crawly dudes that can go over spikes, and I've morphed into, like, 7 of them, or 8 of them, I now have the ability to do that at will, so if I come across an area that has those spikes, I've now, from defeating these enemies before, have unlocked the ability, even if those enemies aren't around, to go over that spike in a completely different area of the map. This is true also of, like, the ones that do ranged attacks. Now I know how to do the ranged attacks, and I can do them anywhere else because I've defeated enough of these enemies. What it made me think of, actually, was Mega Man. Because one of my favorite things about Mega Man was the idea that you defeat the bosses, and then you get their abilities from the bosses. I always liked that idea. Yeah. And so Biomorph does something like that. Nevergrave is where you possess the corpses of the enemies in that area.
Yeah.
And then they die, and you can't use them again. But I like the Biomorph idea of being able to, once you get enough of them collected, it becomes like a new form you can take on at will. Because you've gone around.
Basically, defeating enemies gives you power-ups.
Sort of like that, yeah. I've seen some games where defeating enemies
Super Mario
gives
Odyssey.
Well, you throw a hat on everything in Super Mario Odyssey.
You're still taking over the creature.
Yeah, but imagine if you were in Super Mario Odyssey and you learned how to do the T-Rex transformation, and then you could go to New Donk City and you could transform into a T-Rex in the city.
Perfect. Mario's always been a shapeshifter.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes Mario's small, sometimes he's a tanuki, sometimes he's on fire.
Sometimes he's a boot. Sometimes he's a boot.
Sometimes he's a boot. A really powerful boot. Worth noting. Sometimes he's a cat. Mario really likes to cosplay. That's what we've taken.
The whole thing's a theatrical anyway, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's all theater production. If
Honestly,
you know
Mario Cats is better than real cats.
Well, it's better than the movie Cats.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
A Baz Luhrmann Cats. Don't let Baz Luhrmann be in control of the Mario franchise. I don't need that in my life. I didn't need the original Cats either, but here we are. Memories. Memory Shards. That's going to be...
Memory Shards.
That's a new song for Cats 2.
There won't be a Cats 2.
There'll be a Cats 9.
Anyways.
Because 9 lives. The cat's musical has 9 lives. Anyway, those were a few things that I thought were interesting in Metroidvanias, and I think could be fun mechanics to try out in other games, so maybe do that. If you're building a Metroidvania, maybe do some cool stuff with these ideas. Let us know, however, if you encountered some interesting mechanics in this style of gaming, if you have any interest in certain ones that are coming out, because it sounds like there's quite a few having a bit of a resurgence right now, so there's a lot of new ones that are coming out, and which ones are your favorite? You can let us know in the comments down below.